It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it.
We never took ourselves too seriously. We never said, look, we're gorgeous, we're great singers, we're great dancers. I mean, we just said, this is it, take it or leave it. You either like us or you hate us.
She's got it.
Their success was beyond anybody's wildest dreams. They become the biggest girl group in the world, bigger than the Supremes, and had the most hit records in the world. That is no mean feat.
They were white, they were bolshy, they had still bits of punk rock attached to them. Girls looking to be tough, sexual, fashion beasts.
They were impossible. They were a brick wall. You could not. If they didn't want to do it, they didn't do it.
In the aftermath of punk, 3 girls with no obvious qualifications decided upon a career in pop music. These girls next door with attitude spent the next 7 years taking on the music industry. They became one of the most successful British girl groups ever, but almost lost their friendship in the process. This is the story of Bananarama.
We were kind of in girl gangs when we were about 12 or 13, and one by one each of us was broken friends with, and there was a point when nobody was speaking to Karen, and I really liked her, so one evening I went up to your house, didn't I?
In secret.
In secret, because I wasn't supposed to see her, and we sort of made a pact that we'd be best friends forever and we wouldn't need anyone else. As soon as I left school, I left home because I wanted to start living, and I really felt like I was sort of living in this suburban, grey kind of tomb. And I'm an adventurer, really, and I wanted to start having adventures. But the great thing about London is it is the refuge of the misfit, So when I moved up to London, I met kindred spirits. I spotted Siobhan across the room, and she looked very similar to me. She had sort of long black crimped hair and monkey boots on. So I thought, there's the girl that's going to be my friend.
I wanted to come to London and had no idea what I was going to do, so I phoned up the BBC and asked them for a job. And she went all dressed up to the interview, and they said, we've got a right cracker starting, didn't they? And then I had my hair cropped.
And dyed purple.
And didn't look a cracker again for a long time.
Until this day.
So I came up with my mum to find somewhere to live. My mum had phoned up the YWCA and got me a space in a room there, a shared room. I got Sarah a place afterwards because she moved up about a month later to go to college. I phoned up the BBC because I thought it sounded glamorous. And when I got here, I found out it was with the finance department, having been impressed with my maths results. And they invited me to join the pensions department, which really wasn't what I had in mind. Unfortunately, my career in television never took off.
Well, Karen and I bumped into Paul Cook in a club, and we were living at the YWCA at the time. And one Sunday morning, we got this message over the tannoy.
And she did.
That's glamorous.
Because men weren't allowed past the front
Paul
hall.
Cook's in reception. We thought, what, Paul Cook from the Sex Pistols? And being sort of ex-little punks, we were like so excited. And we ran downstairs, and there he was. And when we actually got thrown out of there, he had a rehearsal room in Denmark Street where the Pistols used to rehearse, and said we could go and live there.
Very smart. Very swish now, isn't it, sir?
The courtyard's cleared up.
God, so different. Oh, look at the rehearsal room. This was all cobbles. Hang on.
It's still here.
It's still here.
But look how clean it is now. We lived here for a year and
This was all we had.
never flushed.
I don't think that's more information than we needed to know, Sarah.
This was the
It's
rehearsal.
still here. There were no windows
Had
here.
no windows at all.
And it was just black. It was just a black padded cell. Originally, I think.
I'd given them a place to nestle, a place to live in the heart of Soho. I answered an ad in the Melody Maker in those days, searching for a place for the Sex Pistols to camp out and practice and do whatever. A place like a Dickensian rabbit hole.
When the Pistols split up, Paul Cook and Steve Jones formed a band called The Professionals, and they used to rehearse in there, and we used to go down there and just rehearse with them.
They'd allow us to do backing vocals.
Yes.
And
then
taught us a couple of guitar chords so we could play along with a couple of the tracks that they did. But
I mean, that's where we kind of got the idea of Bananarama from. Just sort of doing backing vocals, and Paul sort of suggested, why don't we get a group together? So that's
So
what
we
we
did.
did. Yeah.
it was Aye Amwana, which is an old Swahili song sung by a group called Black Blood.
So that's really where it all started,
Paul
in here.
came and produced for
Yeah,
us.
Paul drummed on and produced. Bless him. But refused to be in this film.
It wasn't long before they came to the attention of Terry Hall, who emerged from the ruins of the Specials in 1980 to form the Fun Boy 3.
I was looking through a copy of the Face magazine and I saw a tiny photo of the three girls who looked really scruffy, and they said they were a band. They didn't look like a band, they just looked scruffy. And I just sort of tracked them down and we met up.
He's cripplingly shy. We were cripplingly shy, so we were sat there like that. And he was sat there like that. And he said, we said, well, we're not singers or anything, and he said, yeah, I know. That's all right then, yeah, all right then, yeah, okay. It was one of those.
They'd made a record, I think with Paul Cook, Aye Amwana. I've never said that right ever. Maybe it's right now, but and I thought the record was quite good. I don't know, it's sort of similar time. There were bands like Malcolm McLaren was doing stuff and Bow Wow Wow were doing stuff, and there seemed to be quite a lot of African influences. I mean, either with clothes or drum beats and stuff. And they just seemed appealing because they didn't seem like they could do it, really. But we felt the same. We were like, we didn't think we could do it either.
We start off with a Fun Boy 3 and Bananarama with It Ain't What You Do, It's the Way That You Do It.
They were very funny and they were very nervous and they couldn't sing. They just couldn't sing. It was pretty much 2 days, like every time we'd start the track, they knew exactly where they had to come in, but they just started laughing.
He liked the look of us.
He liked
because
our
we were
shoes.
moccasins. Yeah. He did. Yes, he did. He liked our moccasins.
Style's a very important factor if you're going to be in a pop group.
Yeah,
You
moccasins
had the root
and
perm,
check
and
shirts.
Karen had
I
a root
did
perm
have a
at that
root
point.
perm.
So, well, what are you doing for your next single? And we went, well, I don't know, I haven't really thought about it. And they said, well, we'll do it with you if you like. I went, all right. They said, what song do you want to do? Well, we'd rehearsed really saying something in the studio that we'd been living in. And so that's how we came to cut that with them. And then the next thing, those 2 singles are released and they're top 5. And we're suddenly sort of in every pop magazine every week and, you know, on top of the pops all the time, but we're still on the dole. And when, you know, but very recognisable, and having to don headscarves to go and sign on, you know. It's funny.
He walked me to my door. I agreed to see him once more. Oh yeah. Ain't like it may not be it, but he moved me tremendously. Although he was bold, my heart he stole. He was really.
This is Babington Court, where we lived in the early 80s for about 3 years.
The scene of the writing of our first album and the start of our career almost.
Yes.
When we hit the big time, wasn't it?
Yeah, we'd sort of fly off club class to America, stay in fancy hotels and come back here, run our fan club from our front room, managed ourselves, and we were still signing on because we hadn't got any money.
We used to go there, they'd say, you know, we would sometimes go to them and then they'd come to us and we would knock on the door and they'd open the door.
They'd be in bed.
And they'd be, yes, and they'd open the door
It was a
and
bit
they'd be
like
totally shocked that we'd go, what are you doing here?
It was
and
very
we'd say, well, we've
similar.
come to write songs as we agreed.
Yes,
and they
yes.
go,
Oh, we're going down the pub.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Nick said to us one day, well, Malcolm McLaren wants a meeting with you. We went, oh, brilliant, okay, because we were a fan of the Pistols.
I think I asked them the question, you know, what is it you want to be? You want to be like the Slits or something? Or Bucks Fizz, which was the #1 record at the time.
And when he finished this great long chat to us, he said, "Oi, you on the end," pointing to Karen. What did I just say? It was so
I felt like
embarrassing.
a stupid schoolgirl who hadn't been listening because I'd been drifting off gazing out of the window. And I had to say, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. And I was mortified. And I just thought I could never work with this man.
They had this kind of sense that they were bolshy. At times, you looked at them, they weren't very attractive. They almost looked like boys, or at least one of them did. And he looked like a girl you wouldn't want to mess around with.
He had an idea where he'd like us to record a song, which I think he'd written or was going to write, called
Don't Touch Me Down There, Daddy.
And I just thought, I don't think so. I could never sing something like that in front of my mother.
Outraged. But it was actually brilliant. In hindsight, that was brilliant as well, you know. But we just didn't want to be somebody else's product. We were doing what we wanted to do, and we didn't need other people's ideas.
It wasn't only Malcolm McLaren's advice that they didn't take.
Complete nightmare. They could never agree about anything. Well, they would argue about just about everything, but they had a funny way of doing it. They would kind of get all sultry and look at each other, but they wouldn't actually argue out loud, you know. They'd all kind of disagree, and then somehow or other, you know, one of them would assert their authority, usually Siobhan, you know, and that would carry the day, and the other two would then grumble away for the next, you know, day or something like that. They could never, I mean, photographs were just a nightmare. We used to do all these photo sessions, right? And they would spend hours and hours and hours looking through these photographs, and invariably they would all pick 4 different photographs, couldn't agree with them, and they would always be absolutely the worst photographs in the whole session.
Yes, come on. Oh, it's open.
Yeah, because we wanted to pay for it, didn't we? Yeah. That was not my boyfriend who snapped it. Oh, Karen.
My bedroom.
Karen's bedroom.
So if you had guests around and they wanted the toilet, if it was your guest, you had to go and get your toilet roll out. We had a shelf each in the cupboard, and a shelf each in the fridge, didn't we? And woe betide anyone who picked food off the wrong shelf. You just weren't allowed. That's where our payphone was.
Oh, yes.
That Robert De Niro phoned us up on.
We met him, where did we meet him in Kettner's? Remember he knocked on the window? We didn't know who it was.
Bubble hat and glasses on. Looked like Benny from Crossroads. If that's not dating me. It is.
Don't come any closer, I don't wanna feel. You're breathing and touching, but nothing's for free. I never want this to happen to me. Don't try to change me, you're wasting your time. Now I got something.
At that time, when they said, right, go in and do a single, we'd go in, do a single, and within a week it was in the charts. That was the way it seemed to be in the 80s. I don't know why. There was this sort of...
That's because we knew what we were doing in the 80s.
Oh,
Foggiest idea what we're doing now.
Yeah, right.
But
So, you know, I mean, it seemed so easy. The way they sounded like Bananarama was the three voices blended together. And you took one out, it wasn't the same. You took another out, it was never the same. They just had this kind of like magical sound. I mean, people have tried to do it since and failed, you know.
It was
They
a
just
sing-along.
had- yeah.
You know, it was a...
But they had attitude, though.
Yes.
You know, you could hear there was some strength in there, you know.
There was a sense that they always had of keeping control of their own destiny. They never wanted to be styled or told what to do, and they were never prepared to be styled or told what to do. So the arguments of the record company created a tension, but it was never, you will do this, you know. Nowadays, you always get the impression that groups really they do what they're told. You know, they're put together by managers, they're put together by record companies. But Bananarama were nothing like that. These were three girls who came out of the do-it-yourself punk ethos and were very much determined to keep control of what they did. And they did that.
By 1984, Bananarama had had 6 consecutive hits, but their next 3 records didn't make it into the top 20. It was time for a change of direction.
Everybody here was like, well, we don't want to do Bananarama. And of course, for me, it was like bread from heaven, because it was almost like asking me to produce the Supremes, because to me, they were my favourite girl group. The whole point that reason they come to us, which we did not become apparent till we'd actually made their first record, was because we had made Spin Me Round for Dead or Alive. And they were huge club fans by the time that we started producing Bananarama. I mean, they were never seen as a club band before, but certainly by the time that they came, we were sort of underground record producers at that time in the gay club scene.
The Dead or Alive.
Yeah, and Dead or Alive.
You Spin Me Round.
And that was kind of like high energy, and we'd never
That's
done
what we
that
want
before.
to do now.
And we just absolutely loved it, and I had this massive adrenaline rush.
She's got it. Yeah, baby, she's got it. I'm your Venus.
They wanted it to sound like Dead or Alive. Well, of course, what you're suddenly adding, you're adding campness to campness, because it's about the goddess of love. So they appear in the video as the devil in red leather. Yeah, right. We're not going to be, you know, they've just gone the archetypal gay video of all time. To appear in the video, you know, in brides' dresses and leather suits, and you suddenly, you know, you're into the realms of pseudo-masochism.
She's got it. Yeah, baby, she's got it.
And we did it all for our own amusement, really. And it caught on in a big way, particularly in all the gay clubs.
We
Very camp on the
forged
dance floor.
routines that every gay man all over the world knows in their sleep.
We'd always
can
done
do.
it when we were talking about going down the St. Moritz. We were always going round the walls in a huge dramatic
Always
kind of
did it,
style, acting
yeah.
out the songs.
course, wherever you go in the world, you know, it is the gay friends we'll meet that are very, very affected by what we did and really excited to meet us, and it's really flattering.
This is Malden Place in Kentish Town, where we lived after Babington Court.
We bought 3 houses next door to each other because we bought in bulk and got huge discounts.
From rags to riches. I mean, finally we were getting paid for what we were doing.
And were you getting on at this time?
Kind of, and not really.
It was
There were
the
no
beginning of the
interconnecting
end.
doors. No. No, it was the last resort. It was. We always used to drink round the pub in the Malden Arms every night, and that was
Ken in the Lane.
a bit of a ritual. And then gradually, I think I started breaking up with my boyfriend, and he was best friends with Karen's boyfriend, and the rot set in.
Stock Aitken and Waterman soon became the sound of the mid-80s, with a production line of acts including Kylie Minogue, Jason Donovan and Rick Astley. While Bananarama battled to retain their identity, cracks soon began to show in their personal relationships, and increasingly between the girls and their now famous producers.
When you made a track with them, they would tell you what they didn't want before you started. So we don't want any of that Stock Aitken Waterman stuff in here. You go, right, let's get this right. You're working with Stock Aitken Waterman, the last thing you want is Stock Aitken Waterman in the record. Okay, right, fine, that's there, we know where we start in, right? We don't want to mention the word love. Of any, you try and write a song that's not got the word in love. I mean, it's like instantly you dry up. And we spent hours, I'll never forget, it was a Sunday. We spent all day trying to write a song without the word love in it. It's impossible, And Siobhan, I'm not going to sing the word love. So you're trying to write about molecules. Well, there's not a lot you can write about molecules, really, So, you go back the next day on the Monday, we say, wait a minute, you can't do this. So we sort of agreed not to write the word love, but we could sort of intimate love. So that sort of loosens it up. And then before you know where you are, writing songs about love, of course. But because, love in the first degree, it's got the word love in the title. But for some unknown reason, Siobhan looked the other way at that point.
I took it very hard, the whole way that Waterman, Stock and Aitken's egos had got to the point where they were quite insultingly naked about diminishing our role in our own records. That really bothered me, and also we were living round the corner from here in 3 houses in a row. After coming from Babington Court, we'd lived together, we'd managed ourselves, we'd been best mates. There were tensions that were starting to emerge within us. When we lived in a row, those tensions didn't go away. It was still, when you're in a band, it's like being married, and in the sense that not only are you emotionally involved, but you're creatively involved and you're financially involved. And so Sarah and Karen were my whole world and had been for years and years and years, and I was theirs. And so it caused us all to sort of, spontaneously combust in a way, Us being the personalities we were, we never had screaming rows, we just froze each other out. And it had stopped being fun and it had become really painful, for all of us. But particularly for me, because those two have been friends from when they were 5. And so it was inevitable, really, and had to happen. We were up for an award at the BPI Awards and they wanted us to perform, so I thought, well, that's a beautiful farewell. So we did this really over-the-top camp performance with sort of an army of greased-up muscle men behind us in stockings and knickers, which was very funny. And that was my fond farewell.
considered continuing as a duo, which we do now. But I think the record company, they saw, the whole visual thing was like 3 people. So they felt we needed a third person. So we kind of bowed to that.
Nathan Jones, you've been gone too long. Nathan Jones, you've been gone too long. If a woman could die of tears.
I went into it totally unthinking and, just threw myself into it. It was actually a very difficult thing in retrospect to replace Siobhan in the first place, which, she was a lot of people's favourite banana. And I didn't know that. And every interview, wherever you were in the world, it would be about Siobhan and how I felt about joining the group. And I was always the new girl. Right up until the very last day, I was always the new girl in the group. I could never get over that hurdle. And I always felt a little bit tacked on the end.
Siobhan formed the successful Shakespeare's Sister in 1989. They had 3 top 10 hits, including a #1, before disbanding in 1995. Jackie O'Sullivan stayed with Bananarama for 3 years before leaving to take up a career as a casting director. Karen and Sarah have continued recording together as Bananarama and have plans for a new album. The 3 original Bananas were reunited in 1997 for a special television recording of the alternative Eurovision Song Contest.
It took 7 years to resolve, didn't it?
It did. It's our anniversary today.
Yeah.
It's a year ago today we all started talking again.
That's so weird. Yes, it was a year ago. Well, it's my birthday today, and a year ago, I finally felt
it was time to let us.
It was time. It was time to reunite as best mates, if not musical partners.
I'm retraining